Hi, my name is Jorg Dekker. I am the Global IP Product Manager and DDoS Services Product Manager for Telia Carrier. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about our journey of introducing RPKI and rejecting invalids in 1299. So first, we've got a couple of obligatory slides about Telia Carrier, a bit of an introduction. We are a small part, a relatively small part of Telia Company, the big Swedish incumbent, very big in the Nordics, of course. AS 1299 was created in 1993. It's then been rather rapid organic growth. We're now a Tier 1 carrier. By some measurements, we are the global #1 internet backbone. We also sell wavelength services, mobile data, some voice products, IX, and Content Connect services as well. A global backbone, largely owned the underlying fiber infrastructure, manage our own DWDM systems as well, growing predominantly in Europe, North America, and growing our presence in Asia with POPs in Tokyo, Singapore, and Hong Kong. One of our carrier declarations is we dare to share. This means we like to be as open as possible with the information we have, and that's one of the things we're trying to do here today. So some perspective about 1299. We have over 2,000 directly connected customer AS networks, around about 150 edge boxes around the world as well. This resulting in, if we include peering connections, about just under 10,000 connections, so AS router pairs. Right? Looking at the graphs in the middle, I don't know if you can really see that, but we can see the plateauing of our customer-facing 10 gig ports and the fairly rampant growth of 100 gig ports. At the moment, in terms of customer-facing 100 gig ports, we have about 1,300, about 200 peering ports in addition to that. And if we include network-facing ports, you can double those numbers as well. We're currently supporting customer edge traffic of around 42 terabits. And that's on a monthly 95th percentile. So as this talk is a bit about BGP routing security, I'll explain a little bit about what we were doing prior to introducing RPKI. We grew this BGP filter server, which we literally call the BGP filter server, in 2005. It's there to pull from 25 IRR databases and push the BGP prefix filters down to each edge box twice a day. It does this at 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the evening CET time, although we are able to do that manually in other times as well. It also already makes use of RPKI rowers to create these prefix filters, and it has done that for at least 12 months. We also use this same server to manage AS path filters. We do still have some customers on that, and we have some customers on a hybrid of the two. But it also, and this is IPv4 and v6, of course, it also allows us to manipulate some of these entries. In the case of a BGP hijack, we can use a BGP filter server to mitigate those instances as well. It acts as a central point for configuring max prefix, RTBH as a service, you have to toggle it. We offer that as a free service to all our customers, but it does need to be enabled. We also have outbound load balancing, which can be enabled through this server. And as of now, we can also say at each connection level, we can enable reject invalids as well. This is a screenshot of the web GUI. As you can see, this is our test ACME transit customer. You can see each individual edge box listed there, and you can toggle it per edge device as well, per ASN. So it doesn't have to be, a big switch to flip on RPKI all over. It can literally be at a per edge box basis, which gives us quite a lot of flexibility when we enable these. In addition to using our prefix filter, come around, I think it was September last year, we became official members of MANRs. This is largely when we were discussing with engineers, I was like, why aren't we already members of MANRs? We seem to be doing quite a bit in terms of filtering and the security. And the response was, well, we're not sure we hit all the criteria. It's a bit tough for a Tier 1 carrier to hit all the criteria. But I was actually fairly pleasantly surprised how easy it was to become a member of this. Up until that point, when they launched the observatory earlier on this year, we were a little bit blind as to how good we were in relation to hitting some of these actions. And I was very pleased when they did launch the observatory, and we could actually see at a benchmark level how we score against others in the industry as well, but also where we needed to improve. Now this top, I haven't marked it up here on the slide, but the top row is essentially the generic all-over members, and the bottom row is ours. Now, so we've got some red points in there as part of the dare to share. We don't mind if we look a bit bad sometimes. It just gives us a bit of a focus area. So filtering at 34%, for example, is a target area for us to improve on. It's part the measures that are used as well. We believe there are some false positives in there, which we need to try and work on. Most of these actual negative scorings come from BGP stream. So we do need to look and spend a bit of time on that. It's actually down from May when we were at 55%. We're now at 34%. So that's something that's a focus area. If we look to the 26% on the right-hand side at the bottom, this is essentially all the prefixes announced as originating from 1299, whether or not they have a valid rower or not. Now, only some of those are actually Telia Carrier prefixes, and all but one have valid rowers. The others are customer prefixes we originate, and we're obviously working with those customers to ensure that they register good rowers that allow us to originate those prefixes. So I actually expect that 26% to be pretty much 100% by the end of the year. So after we joined MANRs, the next logical step seemed to be, well, let's look a bit more at RPKI. And of course, we were looking at RPKI prior to August, but August I've put down as kind of the project start date, when we started having regular meetings about what we're going to do. We're going to take this a bit more seriously. We're going to deploy validators. We're going to validate all the prefixes that come in, and then think about our approach to rejecting invalids as well. So that was August 2018. Some of the initial discussions were really about, are these validators stable enough? Because being obviously a Tier 1, very commercial, we need to make sure that this doesn't break overnight. So a lot of time and effort was spent, I say, playing with the different validators available, looking at hardware options and everything else. We also wanted to make sure we didn't break anything. We have, as I mentioned before, we've got RTBH as a value-add service, free value-add service to our customers. We wanted to make sure that didn't break. And also trying to understand how much work is involved, what are we going to do when we start rejecting invalids. And of course, we were a little bit blind up to the point unless you start validating. So the first step, we agreed, let's test them. Let's test the stability of the validators. Let's start validating, tagging the prefixes as they come in, and do some analysis. And then we'll talk about how we go about implementing the reject invalids. A lot of discussion about, do you do peers first? Do you do customers first? We definitely opted it was best to do a mix of both. We were relaxed enough with the BGP filter server that we could implement this in a very controlled, methodical way. It wasn't going to be, a big bang approach. A little bit about the topology that we've opted for. We've gone for 4 validators around the globe. We opted for LA, New York, Frankfurt, and Stockholm as the physical locations of these boxes. And we opted for a mix of the different validators out there. So we use RIPE Validator, version 3, Routinator, Octo RPKI as well. On the update frequency, we've staggered these. So Routinator and RIPE are updated every hour, and in Europe that is on the hour. For New York, it's 15 minutes past, and Octo RPKI is updated every 20 minutes. Each edge box in AS1299 has a session to each of the validators. So we felt this, and we also used 2 different hardware vendors for the validators themselves as well, so it kind of gave us that bit of a warm feeling about the reliability and the redundancy, so we wouldn't hit a single bug that would affect all our validators. Loss of 1 or maybe even 2 validators shouldn't really affect us adversely at all. Early testing showed that actually some of the validators were a little bit less stable than others. We had some challenges last year with Right Validator. That is definitely a lot more stable now than it was. We actually still have a cron job that resets the daemons on these every 24 hours as well at staggered times. Which you found Routinator to be the most stable, bar 1 bug that we hit with the malformed rower, but I think that's a well-known issue. And during, I'm not even too sure where it was, when it was, to be honest, but some issue with LACNIC repository didn't really cause us any problems due to our staggered updates that we're doing across the validators. And of course, if a repository is unavailable for over an hour, for example, our expected impact would be that we just tag invalids as unknown, and therefore we would allow traffic through. And I know there's plenty of industry discussions about how to avoid that activity as well, but beyond the scope of this discussion. So once the validators were in place, we were tagging all incoming prefixes. We used the BGP communities listed here to tag them, whether they're invalid, valid, or unknown. We updated the looking glass. This is available now, has been since October last year, where you can look up a prefix. It's even got a nice color coding on whether or not it's RPKI valid or unknown. To enhance this and to try and make the analysis possible to see what the impact would be when we start rolling out reject invalids, we decided we need to push all this information in one central location. We chose AWS S3. We use Athena for that. We have NetFlow and BGP RIB information coming via PMACT into Amazon. We also push ROA reports from our validators into the same place, and customer information and configs in from the BGP filter server as well. This means we can pull a pretty healthy amount of information off the network and do some good analysis on it on a per adjacent AS basis. So looking at that, what we can see, this top graph here shows the total traffic volume throughout a day. So we've got 5-minute samples. It's quite granular. The red line that you can just about see on top there represents traffic volume of from 2 invalid prefixes, according to RPKI. Now that peaks at around 1% of our traffic. So it's not massive, but 1% of 42 terabits is still a reasonable amount, I guess. What we can do is look at further details of the invalids. So we start looking at the line graph in the bottom. That is, again, a 5-minute based chart looking at the traffic from or 2 invalid prefixes, let's say. And then we can also cut it down to a per router basis. So the stacked chart down here actually shows you reasons for invalid, whether it's length or origin as well. So it gave us quite a significant opportunity to try and analyze what we were doing before we moved forward with rejecting invalids. So where are we now? The top graph shows you peer connections. We're back down to connections now. So this is an AS to router connection. So for our peering partners, there's a lot less, of course, of those, but that still equates to about 670 connections in total. We rolled out reject invalids to all of those, and that was done by the 15th of October this year. So we're now fully rejecting invalids from all our peers. Customers was a slightly different story, and again, this comes back down to our initial consideration of let's not break anything, right? We want to do this for the right reasons. We don't want to actually cause any problems. In the position we're in, we have to be a bit careful with that. But you could see actually we ramped up pretty quick. This isn't it, obviously, in terms of 100%, We wrapped up to 80% coverage of all our customer connections relatively quickly once we started rolling out reject invalids. We picked the easy ones, I'll be honest. We picked customers with multiple connections that weren't sending us any invalids. So we could turn those on relatively quickly, and that's where we are at the moment. And we're now at 80%, where we've kind of plateaued for a while. We're now in that next stage of what can we do about these, but again, making sure we're not causing our customers any grief. So in terms of next steps, one of the things that we do see as a bit of a blind spot for us now is once we've rejected invalids, we actually don't know what they are anymore, because all the tools that we have collect post-policy, so we obviously have to get around to deploying a BMP collector to be able to get some of that visibility back. And that's what we're working on at the moment. This will also help us significantly in tackling that last 20%. We really want to be able to have a meaningful conversation with some of our customers about, you know, this is what you guys need to be able to do. This is a potential impact if we flick this on. We don't want to just cause them grief and then help them get out of it. We'd like to rather have it a much more comfortable conversation. So we believe that once we've got a BMP collector in place, feeding that into the same Amazon repository, we can front-end that with our customer portal. Our customer portal is seen as a central point for this. I know there's a lot of customers that probably don't really like the use of portals. They'd rather use APIs or some other mechanism, but for me, as the product manager, I want to push it through to the portal, because I also know as soon as it's pushed into the portal, it is actually available in all APIs as well. So our IT department are very busy working on that. But you know, what I'd like to see from any Telia Carrier customer is their ability to be able to log in, have a look at the prefixes they send us. Actually, first of all, determine whether or not we've enabled reject invalids on their sessions or not, and they should be able to see that from the customer portal as well. And then see all the prefixes they send to us by the RPKI status we've tagged it as. And of course, then that should be their first port of call. If they have any connectivity issues, they can go, okay, well, we're rejecting that because of, you know, an invalid rower, etc. So that's what we want to be able to do. I'm busy pushing that up the priority list internally, and I'm hoping to be able to have that fully available to all our customers by the end of Q1 next year. In the meantime, we're not leaving it there and waiting. We're still looking at our top customers, if you like, that are sending us plenty of invalids and trying to encourage those. I mean, of course, there's some geographical variances on where we're seeing the biggest challenges for us. But I think essentially it comes down to we want to be able to help customers on this journey to register their rowers and not cause them any connectivity challenges or issues. We did, in the press release that came out in September, we did target an end-of-year full coverage for reject invalids. And I think that was a bit of a bold target. I'd love to be able to say that we believe we'll still be able to achieve that, but I think we could only achieve that if we just flicked the switch and turned it on. So I don't believe that's still going to be the approach. I reckon end of Q1 or maybe even bleeding into Q2 is much more realistic. Okay, that was it. I finished a little bit quicker than I thought. There are RPKI stickers available at the registration desk if there's still some of those available if you'd like to pick them up. But other than that, I guess open to questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Right, okay. Thank you very much, Jorg.